The meadow hummed with life, a symphony of buzzing bees and chirping grasshoppers providing the constant backdrop to Whiskers's world. Sunlight, thick and golden, poured over the tall grasses, warming the small hollow beneath a sprawling willow where Whiskers had made her home. 3 tiny kittens tumbled over each other in a heap of playful chaos. Patches, the boldest of the litter, was a whirlwind of black and white fur, always the first to explore, the first to pounce on an unsuspecting butterfly. Socks, a more timid creature with perfectly white paws that looked just as their namesake, usually preferred to watch from a safe distance, his blue eyes wide with curiosity. The smallest was a calico with a single perfectly round black spot on her forehead. She was the most vocal, her tiny mews filling the air whenever she felt neglected, which was often. Whiskers watched them with a soft, contented purr rumbling in her chest. She was a sleek, gray tabby, her fur worn in places from the constant wear and tear of motherhood. Her green eyes, usually sharp and alert, were softened with affection as she observed her kittens. "Careful, Patches," she warned gently, as the adventurous kitten teetered precariously close to the edge of their hollow. "Don't go too far." Patches, of course, ignored her, batting playfully at a dangling willow branch. Socks, startled by his brother's antics, scooted closer to Whiskers, burying his face in her fur. Dot, never one to be left out, wriggled her way between them, demanding attention with a series of insistent meows. Whiskers licked each of them in turn, her tongue rough but comforting. "My little darlings," she murmured, nuzzling them close. "You're my whole world." She worried constantly. The meadow was a beautiful place, a haven of tranquility, but it was also full of dangers. Hawks circled overhead, their shadows fleeting across the grass, and foxes roamed the edges of the nearby forest, their eyes gleaming with hunger. She had to be vigilant, always on guard, ready to defend her kittens with every ounce of strength she possessed. Even now, as the sun warmed her fur and her kittens suckled contentedly, a knot of anxiety tightened in her stomach. She glanced towards the forest, its dark depths a stark contrast to the sun-drenched meadow. Something felt different today. The air was still, the usual chorus of birdsong muted. A sense of unease prickled at her senses, a silent warning that something was amiss. She couldn't shake the feeling that the peaceful rhythm of their meadow life was about to be broken. The scent of smoke, faint but unmistakable, drifted on the breeze. It was coming from the forest. A low growl rumbled in her throat, a promise of protection, a pledge of unwavering devotion. Her kittens were safe for now. But for how long? Flames in the forest. The wind shifted, carrying with it the acrid tang of smoke. Whiskers, usually so relaxed as she nursed her kittens in the sun-drenched meadow, tensed. The scent was different, sharper than the usual wood smoke from the distant village chimneys. A frantic energy pulsed through her, a primal warning she couldn't ignore. Then she saw it. A flicker of orange danced on the horizon, above the tree-line. At first it was small, innocent almost. But the wind, a mischievous hand, fanned the flames, and with terrifying speed, the innocent flicker became a ravenous beast, devouring the forest in its path. Panic seized Whiskers. She nudged Pip, the smallest of her litter, hissing softly, "Wake up, little one. We have to go." The other kittens, roused by her urgency, stirred. Chester, ever the brave one, puffed out his chest, but even he couldn't mask the fear in his wide green eyes. Luna, usually so playful, clung to Whisker's side. The roar of the fire grew louder, a monstrous symphony of crackling wood and spitting embers. Ash rained down, coating the meadow in a gritty film. There was no time to be gentle. Whiskers scooped up Pip by the scruff of his neck, his tiny body limp with shock. "Follow me," she yowled to Chester and Luna, her voice tight with desperation. They ran. The heat scorched their fur, and the smoke choked their lungs. Whiskers kept close to the ground, guiding her kittens through the tall grass, away from the inferno. The forest creatures, rabbits and squirrels, fled alongside them, a chaotic stampede of terror. Finally, they reached the edge of the forest, the familiar scent of Martha's farm a beacon in the smoky haze. Whiskers led her kittens towards the barn, hoping for refuge. She remembered Martha's kindness, the scraps of fish she often left out, the warm milk on cold mornings. The barn was locked, but near the back, under a stack of old wooden crates, she found a small opening. It was cramped and dusty, but it was shelter. She pushed her kittens inside, nudging them until they huddled together, trembling. Even Barnaby, usually so stoic, whimpered softly. Whiskers peered out, watching the flames lick at the edge of the field, the air thick with smoke and the screams of the forest. She licked her paw and ran it over Chester's singed fur, then Luna's. Pip was still trembling, buried deep in the pile. "We'll be all right," she murmured, more to reassure herself than her kittens. But even as she spoke, a new wave of fear washed over her. Where was Barnaby? He'd been right behind her. She pushed her way back out of the den into the smoke-filled air, calling his name, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. A cry in the ashes. The reek of scorched pine clung to the air, a biting, lingering ghost of the fire. Whiskers navigated the calcined remains of the forest, each footfall a crunching lament on the charred ground. Barnaby's hunger was a constant ache, and her hunts had yielded nothing near their refuge. A deeper craving, more urgent than her own, clawed at her insides. The once lush woods were now a desolate tableau. Gleaming shards of twisted metal, remnants of fallen branches, mocked her with reflections of the sunlit devastation. Soot already dusted her paws, stinging her nostrils. Driven by instinct, she pressed onward. A fragile sound, nearly swallowed by the soughing wind, snagged her ears. A ragged whimper. She halted, ears swiveling, pinpointing the source. Again it came, a miniature, heartbreaking lament. Abandoning the fruitless search for sustenance, she homed in on the sound, her pulse a frantic drum against her ribs. Bursting through a tangle of brittle, blackened shrubs, their thorny arms like bony claws, she found the source. The air hung thick with the charnel scent of decay. Then she saw it, a tiny cinder of a creature, curled at the base of a toppled tree trunk. A bobcat cub, scarcely larger than her own brood, its fur singed and matted. One paw jutted at an unnatural angle. Its fragile frame trembled with each shallow breath. Another cry, a sound so laced with pain, resonated within Whiskers. Hesitation flickered, brief as starlight. Not her blood. A wild thing surely doomed. She edged closer, senses heightened. No sign of the mother. Only ruin and this pitiable scrap clinging to life. She lowered her head, nudging the cub gently. The small body tensed, then yielded to her touch. Wide, frightened eyes, blue depths clouded with misery, looked up at her. A feeble cry, a plea she couldn't deny. Licking the singed fur, a silent promise of comfort, she knew what she had to do. Barnaby craved food, yes, but this scrap of life needed something more fundamental. A mother's care. With infinite gentleness, she gathered the cub in her jaws and turned back toward the shelter. The weight was considerable, but the burden on her heart was far greater. Salvation was far from assured. The future remained shrouded. One thing, however, was certain. She could not abandon it to die alone. An unexpected family. The air tasted of acrid ash, a ghostly reminder of the fire as Whiskers' nose twitched. A whimper, ragged and forlorn, escaped the bobcat cub, grating against her core. He was a miniature beast, utterly helpless beneath the black skeletons of what were once bushes. Not her blood, not her kind, yet a dormant spring within her, the maternal instinct that had led her to search for her vanished offspring, burst forth anew. Doubt wrestled with that deep-seated drive. He dwarfed any kitten she'd known, his nascent claws like tiny daggers, his jaws promising a future of brutal feasts. Could she safeguard him, and any future litter of her own? Was intervention even justified? Nature could be merciless. Then the cub emitted another cry, pure, unadulterated agony, and the debate ended. A soft, lilting trill escaped Whiskers as she edged forward. The cub recoiled, golden eyes wide pools of terror. He scrambled, but a crippled leg betrayed him, sending him crashing back with a stifled yelp. Delicately, she bumped him with her head, then began meticulously licking his scorched pelt. He reeked of cinders and seared flesh, the fur revealing patches of tender, irritated skin. He trembled but held his ground. Drawing a steadying breath, Whiskers settled beside him, lowering herself so he could reach her back. It was an awkward maneuver, the cub a cumbersome weight she wasn't used to. Somehow she managed, her grip firm but measured around the nape of his neck. He stiffened, then yielded, instinct overriding his fear. The trek back to her haven was a trial. The cub's bulk was a shifting burden, threatening to upset her balance with every stride. Barbs snagged at her coat, treacherous pebbles menaced her paws. Yet she persevered, fueled by a vision of her sheltered den and the raw vulnerability in the cub's gaze. At last, she neared the familiar opening. She shoved the cub forward, then collapsed onto the mossy nest, her breath coming in ragged bursts. He lay motionless, eyes glazed over. Without pause, Whiskers commenced tending to his wounds, her tongue removing the grime and char. He winced initially but soon relaxed under her gentle care. Content that she had cleansed him sufficiently, she nudged him toward her belly, where the memory of her kittens still stirred, the milk a spectral offering. He hesitated, bewildered. This was not his dam. The scent was foreign. Yet, the relentless ache in his stomach and the soothing resonance of her purr proved irresistible. He nudged against her, tentatively at first, then with increasing fervor. He latched on, suckling with a primal need that surprised her. As he fed, tension leached from his small body, and his breathing evened out. The fright in his eyes began to dissipate, replaced by a flicker of peace. Whiskers' purr deepened, a comforting rumble in the small space. He was secure for now. He was hers for the moment. New brother. Patches was the first to see him. He froze, a tiny black statue near the food bowl, his nose twitching. Socks, always braver, crept closer, hissing a question mark. Ever cautious, stayed behind Whiskers' legs, only her wide, emerald eyes visible. The newcomer was small, smaller even than Dot. His fur was a riot of browns and blacks, a stark contrast to their sleek housecat coats. And his ears, tufted like little feathered antennae. He whimpered softly, a sound so unlike their own mules, it sent another shiver of unease through Patches. Whiskers nudged them gently. "Hush, little ones," she purred, a rumble that vibrated through them. She licked the cub's head, a gesture they knew well, the universal language of motherly love. "He is hurt and needs our help. He is family now." Family. The word felt strange, foreign. Their family was Whiskers, Patches, Socks, and Dot. This was different. Rusty, as Whiskers had decided to call him, remained a source of nervous curiosity for days. He mostly slept, tucked against Whiskers' belly, a twitching, purring ball of wildness. Patches would edge closer when Rusty was asleep, sniffing tentatively at his strange, earthy scent. Socks, bolder still, would bat playfully at Rusty's tail, retreating quickly when the cub stirred. Dot remained the most skeptical, keeping her distance and watching Rusty with unwavering suspicion. Slowly, though, the fear began to fade, replaced by cautious fascination. Rusty, regaining his strength, started to explore. He tumbled and wobbled, his oversized paws making him clumsy. He batted at dust motes dancing in the sunlight, his amber eyes gleaming with a hunter's instinct, even in miniature. One afternoon, Socks, forgetting his earlier trepidation, pounced on Rusty's tail. Rusty, startled, let out a hiss, then a playful growl. He turned, batting back at Socks with a paw that, even then, held a hint of future power. Patches, drawn by the commotion, cautiously joined in. Soon, all three kittens were tumbling over each other, chasing Rusty's tail, nipping playfully at his ears. Dot, still hesitant, watched from the edge of the rug. Whiskers nudged her gently, encouragingly. Dot took a tentative step forward, then another. She stalked towards the playful pile, her tail twitching. Finally, she launched herself into the fray, batting at Rusty's nose with a delicate paw. Rusty yelped, then purred, rubbing his head against Dot's soft fur. She purred back, a low, rumbling sound that mirrored Whisker's own. The 4 kittens tangled together, a chaotic, mismatched family, bathed in the warm afternoon sun. The earthy scent of the wild melded with the comforting scent of home, creating something new, something strange, something right. Buster's discovery. Buster, the old farm dog, lumbered through the overgrown section of the orchard, his nose twitching. The scent of decaying apples and damp earth usually held his interest, but today a new, unfamiliar aroma tugged at his senses. It was wild, musky, and undeniably feline. He grumbled, a low rumble in his chest, and followed the scent trail, his tail wagging with growing anticipation. He pushed through a tangle of blackberry bushes, the thorns snagging at his fur, and emerged into a small clearing. There, nestled beneath the exposed roots of an ancient apple tree, was a shallow den. The scent was overwhelming now, and Buster's bark erupted, a sharp, insistent sound that shattered the afternoon stillness. Inside the den, Whiskers tensed. She had been grooming Rusty, patiently licking his singed fur, encouraging him to stretch his injured leg. The kittens, normally tumbling over each other in a furry heap, froze, their tiny bodies pressed against her. Buster's bark was a primal threat, a sound that resonated deep within her, stirring instincts she hadn't known she possessed. She nudged Rusty deeper into the burrow, her head low, ears flattened. He looked up at her, his amber eyes wide with fear. She couldn't let anything happen to him, to any of them. Buster, emboldened by the lack of immediate resistance, pawed at the entrance of the den. He barked again, louder this time, a challenge. He was a farm dog, protector of the property, and this wild smell, it didn't belong. Whiskers rose, her lithe body a study in controlled tension. She positioned herself between Buster and her family, her back arched, fur bristling. A low growl rumbled in her throat, escalating into a furious hiss. She hadn't felt this ferocity in a long time. The kittens whimpered, a chorus of tiny anxieties. Buster, taken aback by her sudden display of aggression, hesitated. He had expected a frightened, cowering creature, not this fierce, protective mother. He took a tentative step back, his tail tucked slightly. Whiskers lunged. Her claws extended, she swiped at Buster's nose, leaving 3 stinging scratches. He yelped in surprise and pain, recoiling from the unexpected attack. From the farmhouse porch, Martha watched the scene unfold. Her heart clenched. She knew Buster's bark. Something was amiss. She grabbed her walking stick and hurried toward the orchard, her brow furrowed with concern. Whiskers pressed her advantage, hissing and spitting, driving Buster further away from the den. He was bigger, stronger, but she was faster, more agile, and fueled by a fierce, unwavering love. This was her family now, and she would defend them with every ounce of her being. Martha's kindness. Martha was halfway to the south orchard when she heard Buster barking. Not his usual squirrel and oak bark, but a frantic, high-pitched yelp that made the hairs on her arms stand up. She veered off the path, pushing through the overgrown blackberry bushes, the thorns snagging at her jeans. Buster! Here, boy. What is it? He was near the old woodpile, circling something, hackles raised, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Martha shouted, "Buster, heel! Now!" He reluctantly obeyed, ears flattened, still whining and glancing back at the woodpile. All right, show me," Martha said, approaching cautiously. Whatever had riled Buster this much was clearly something to be reckoned with. She peered into the shadows. At first, she saw only the wood stacked haphazardly, the usual collection of spiders and dusty leaves. Then 2 yellow eyes glinted back at her. A cat, but not one she recognized. Lean, with unusually large paws and tufted ears. And beside her, 3 kittens, tumbling over each other in a playful heap. But something was different. Something was wrong. Tucked away, separate from the kittens, was another, smaller creature. A bobcat cub, no bigger than her hand, its fur singed and matted, one leg bent at an unnatural angle. It trembled, its eyes wide with fear. The mother cat, Whiskers, Martha realized, hissed, a protective snarl baring her teeth. Martha recognized the fierce love in her eyes. She understood. Whiskers had taken this injured cub under her wing. "Easy, girl," Martha said softly, holding up her hands. "I'm not going to hurt them. Promise." She backed away slowly, giving them space. "Buster, come." She clipped the leash to his collar. "Let's go, boy. Leave them be." Back at the farmhouse, Martha filled a bowl with extra milk, adding a spoonful of honey. She mixed a bit of antibiotic powder into a small dish of wet cat food. She grabbed an old blanket from the linen closet. Returning to the woodpile, she placed the food and milk a few feet away, then gently tossed the blanket near the cub. Whiskers watched her every move, suspicion still flickering in her eyes. "He needs help," Martha whispered, more to herself than the cat. "He's hurt bad." Over the next few days, Martha continued to bring food and medicine. Slowly, Whiskers began to trust her. She would still hiss if Martha got too close to the cub, but she allowed her to observe. Martha cleaned the cub's wound with antiseptic, careful not to cause him any more pain. She splinted his leg with popsicle sticks and bandages. She started calling him Rusty, for the reddish tinge to his singed fur. Rusty was weak and scared, but he had a fighter's spirit. He lapped up the milk and nibbled at the food Martha offered, his tiny body slowly regaining strength. Martha knew she couldn't keep him forever. He was a wild animal, and eventually, he'd need to be released back into the forest. But for now, she would do everything she could to help him heal, to give him a chance. Whiskers, the unlikely foster mother, seemed grateful for the help. A bond was forming, not just between Martha and the cats, but between her and the wild heart of the woods itself. Growing up together. The wobble in Rusty's legs lessened each day. Martha, her hands gentle but firm, cleaned his wound and fed him milk replacer from a small syringe. Whiskers, ever vigilant, would nudge him closer to her warmth after each feeding, her purr a constant, comforting rumble. Soon, the raw, angry gash on Rusty's flank became a pale scar hidden beneath a fuzz of new fur, the same tawny color as the spots slowly appearing on his coat. It wasn't long before Rusty was batting playfully at Whiskers' tail, a clumsy swipe compared to the precise flicks of Patches, Socks and Dot. The kittens, now balls of fluff tumbling over each other, accepted him readily. They'd swarm him, tiny claws pricking his thick fur as they wrestled, imitating Whiskers' hunting stances. Rusty, confused at first, would simply roll onto his back, all four paws waving in the air. But he was a quick study, and soon he was batting back, learning to control his own much larger paws. He even began to mimic their purrs, a low, guttural vibration that sounded more like a rusty hinge than a contented cat. Martha would often find them all piled together in a sunny patch on the living room rug, a chaotic tangle of limbs and fur. She'd smile, a warmth spreading through her chest. "Look at you all," she'd murmur, scratching Whiskers behind the ears. Growing up together. But beneath the veneer of domesticity, Rusty's wildness was stirring. The playful swats at Whiskers' tail evolved into focused stalks, his body low to the ground, haunches twitching. He'd fixate on dust motes dancing in the sunlight, his pupils dilating, and then launch himself into the air, landing with a surprising thud. He started scaling the curtains, his claws ripping small, almost invisible tears in the fabric. One afternoon, Martha found him perched precariously on top of the bookshelf, batting at a framed photograph. "Rusty, get down from there," she scolded gently, reaching for him. He flattened his ears, a low growl rumbling in his chest. It wasn't the playful growl he used with the kittens. This was different, a primal sound that sent a shiver down Martha's spine. She paused, her hand hovering. In that moment, she saw not a kitten learning to play, but a wild creature, reclaiming its instincts. She slowly lowered her hand. "All right," she said softly. "But be careful." Rusty, after a moment, blinked, the wildness receding from his eyes. He stretched, yawned, and then gracefully leaped down, landing silently on the rug. He rubbed against Martha's leg, purring, the rusty hinge sound back in place. But Martha knew, as she watched him stalk a stray housefly with deadly focus, that the wild was a part of him now, a part she couldn't, and perhaps shouldn't, try to tame. A wild heart. The forest beckoned to Rusty with a primal summons, a melody inaudible to Whiskers, a resonance only his instincts could decipher. A gnawing restlessness had gripped him for days. Childish games with the kittens had lost their savor. He'd often perch at the yard's boundary, amber eyes drinking in the sight of the trees, nose quivering, catching scents beyond their perception. Then one dawn he was simply gone. His absence echoed keenly in Whisker's heart. The kittens, bewildered by his vanished playfulness, roamed, their tiny voices querying his name in the strange, sudden quiet. Whiskers comforted them, a low purr vibrating through her, a poor match to the weight in her chest. Deep inside, she understood its inevitability. She had patiently healed him, tutored him in the art of barnmouse hunting, but she could never quell the wildness thrumming within him. Days dissolved into weeks, the kittens slowly acclimating, filling the void with freshly invented games. Whiskers maintained her watch, ever vigilant, yet a part of her strained for a familiar, deeper-toned meow that never arrived. The turning leaves ushered in autumn's chill breath, and the world readied itself for winter's slumber. One evening, as the sun bled across the horizon, painting the sky with fiery colors, Whiskers guided her kittens to their familiar haunt by the woods. They frolicked and tumbled, their youthful exuberance a sharp counterpoint to the tranquil beauty of the gloaming. That's when she noticed him. He stood sentinel at the wood's edge, a magnificent creature bathed in the fading radiance. The awkward, injured cub she'd sheltered had vanished. He was now a bobcat in his prime, sinewy muscles moving beneath a luxurious tawny coat, ear tufts elongated and graceful. His eyes, still that familiar amber, locked with hers across the expanse. He didn't venture closer nor utter a sound. He simply observed. Whiskers recognized the unwavering gaze, the characteristic tilt of his head. It was Rusty. A silent understanding flowed between them, a bond forged in shared adversity and improbable affection. Sensing her stillness, the kittens ceased their play, their gazes following hers. They didn't know him, not truly, but they detected a resonance, a sense of inherent safety. He remained there for a timeless moment, a guardian at the threshold of their world, then pivoted and melted into the forest shadows. Whiskers knew, with a certainty that resonated deep within her, that he would forever be watching over them, a wild heart eternally tethered to theirs. Their family redefined endured.